It happened in the middle of my own living room, with my casserole still steaming on the table, and everyone pretending they didn't hear what they just heard. My mother-in-law leaned back on my gray velvet sofa like she'd bought it herself, smoothed her skirt, and smiled that tight, polite smile she reserves just for me. "You know, houses are for families," she said, eyes on the TV, but voice aimed like a dart. "Wives, those can be temporary." The room went quiet in that weird, stretchy way silence gets when people don't want to pick a side. The game was on, plates clinking, kids' cartoons still playing faintly from my nephew's tablet in the corner. But all I could hear was that one word echoing in my own head: temporary. I froze halfway between the kitchen and the coffee table, holding a bowl of salad like a shield. My husband, Jamal, sat beside his mother, scrolling his phone, smirking at something on the screen. If he heard her, he didn't show it. Or maybe he heard and chose not to. That almost hurt worse. I set the bowl down carefully, like my hands weren't shaking. "I'm sorry?" I asked, even though I had heard her clearly. She turned to me slowly, still smiling that church lady smile that always says, "Bless your heart. You really don't know your place, do you?" "Oh, I'm just talking in general, dear," she said. "Men build. Men create legacies. Women come and go. That's just life. But this house?" Her eyes swept over the crown molding, the hardwood floors, the picture window I'd begged the contractor for. "This is my son's family home. This is ours. It'll always be here for him. For him. Not us. Not me." My chest tightened, but I forced my face to stay neutral. Across the room, Jamal's cousin snorted into his soda, quickly covering it up with a cough. His wife, Tiana, shot me an apologetic look, like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. I wanted to say, "Ma'am, you sleep in the guest room here. I pay the mortgage that holds up that ceiling you're sitting under. If anybody's temporary in this house, it sure isn't me." Instead, I took a breath and started clearing the plates. Because that's what you do when you've been trained your whole life to keep the peace, even when someone sets it on fire in front of you. Here's what nobody in that room knew, except me. The down payment for this house came out of my father's life insurance. My father, who died of a heart attack when I was 30. My father, who used to tell me, "Don't ever be at the mercy of somebody else's roof, baby. Own where you lay your head." When the check came, I didn't buy a car. I didn't take a vacation. I sat at my little apartment table with a cheap calculator and a legal pad and ran numbers until my eyes hurt. Back then, Jamal and I had been married 2 years. We were living in a one-bedroom rental with loud neighbors, leaky windows, and dreams bigger than our space. We could finally get a house, I'd told him, hands shaking, laying the paperwork in front of him. A real one, somewhere we can start a family. At first, he'd been excited. "Baby, for real? You sure you don't want to keep some of this?" he'd asked. "We'll keep some," I'd said. But my daddy didn't work all his life for me to die in a rental. He'd hugged me, kissed my forehead, and said, "That's why I married you. You think big." Those words felt real back then. When we started the process, the bank took one look at our profiles and politely slid the stack of responsibility in my direction. My credit score was higher. My job as a nurse case manager was more stable than his contracting work. My income history was cleaner. The loan officer told us plainly, "We'll approve the mortgage if she's the primary borrower. We can add you as co-borrower, Mr. King, but her profile is what makes this work." Jamal laughed it off. "Put whatever you gotta put," he'd said. "It's all in the family." At closing, I sat at a long conference table with a stack of papers so tall it looked like a mini skyscraper. The lawyer walked us through deed documents, promissory notes, disclosures. I remember my hand cramping from signing my name so many times. Nia King, borrower, owner. We put Jamal on the title because it felt right. He was my husband. I wanted him to feel like it was ours. But when the lawyer slid that final deed across the table and said, "The primary owner of record is Mrs. King, based on source of funds and loan approval," no one argued. Not Jamal, not his mother, not his cousins. They were just happy to take house selfies afterward, glasses raised, his mother crying in the kitchen about my son's first home. My son's, not his wife's. Back then, I let it slide. It felt small compared to the pride in his eyes, the hum in my chest when I walked into my kitchen and opened my cabinets. I thought time and love would smooth out the language. I was wrong. The comments started small. Little jokes from my mother-in-law Althea whenever she visited. "Don't get too comfortable, baby." Men with houses got options. "You know, if y'all ever split, you can always go back to renting. Jamal will still have this as his base. I told him since he was a boy, own the land." Women always find somewhere to go. She'd say it with a chuckle, stirring the pot on my stove. At first, I brushed it off. She's old school. She's bitter about her own divorce. She doesn't mean it. But words wear grooves over time. You hear something enough, your heart starts making room for it, even when your brain knows better. The day she called me temporary was a Sunday. We'd invited the family over because she'd been complaining she never sees her son anymore, even though she came by at least once a week. The house was loud and warm. Football game on the TV, my mac and cheese on the counter, kids running in and out to the backyard. Althea walked in without knocking, like always, and kissed Jamal on the cheek first. "My handsome boy," she cooed, patting his chest. "How's my house holding up?" "Your house or mine," I said, lightly trying to keep it playful. "Because I'm the one who just paid the mortgage on Friday." A few people chuckled. Althea's smile thinned, just a little. "You know what I mean," she said. "A man's home is his castle. Women are like guests. Some stay longer than others, but the castle remains." It stung, but I still could have let it go. It was later, after dinner, when the dishes were mostly done and I came out of the kitchen to drop off that salad bowl, when she crossed the line. They were talking about someone's messy divorce, one of Jamal's coworkers who had to move into an apartment. "That's why I told my son from the start," Althea said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't ever put a woman in a position where she thinks she can take your house. Wives are temporary. Blood is permanent. What matters is this stays in the family." She gestured around the living room, at the walls she didn't paint, the furniture she didn't buy, the floors my daddy's money paid for. And that's when she said it. "You're temporary, baby. No offense," she added, like the word temporary was somehow softened by baby. "Young women come, young women go, but this house is for my son, my grandchildren, and my family name. Remember that." The room inhaled as one. I felt my ears burn, my eyes prickle. For a second, I saw myself from the outside, a 36-year-old black woman in her own home, standing there holding a serving bowl like a maid, being told in front of everyone she was just passing through. Jamal shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't correct her. He didn't say, "Mama, don't talk to my wife like that." He didn't say, "Actually, Mama, you're sitting in the house she bought." He said nothing. That silence hurt worse than any insult. I swallowed hard. "Good to know where I stand," I said quietly. Althea waved her hand, laughing. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm just talking real. Besides, you'll be fine wherever you go. You got that nurse job, right?" And there it was. In her mind, I was disposable. Something that could be moved, replaced, reshuffled. The house was the real prize, and that belonged to her bloodline. I excused myself, went back to the kitchen, and turned on the faucet just so no one would hear me breathing too hard. For a moment, I imagined marching back out there with the closing folder, slamming the deed on the coffee table, and reading it out loud like a sermon. Buyer of record, Nia King. Source of funds, life insurance. Deceased father, policyholder, James King. Primary borrower, Nia King. But I didn't do that. Not yet. Instead, I wiped my face, dried my hands, and finished loading the dishwasher. Because what she didn't know, and what I suddenly realized I needed to stop keeping quiet about, was simple. I wasn't the temporary one here. Her belief that everything her son touched automatically became the family's, that was what was about to expire. She just didn't know the lawyer and the county records were already on my side. I just hadn't brought them into the living room yet. After everyone left that night, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Paper plates in the trash, wine glasses in the sink, kid footprints on the hallway tile. The usual aftermath of a family Sunday. But the silence afterward was different. Heavy, tight. I wiped the counter for the third time, going over the same spot until there was nothing left to clean. Temporary. The word kept circling my head like a fly I couldn't swat. Jamal came into the kitchen, opening the fridge like nothing had happened. "You trying to save this chicken?" he asked, already reaching for the foil. I stared at him. "That's what you got from tonight?" I said quietly. "Leftover chicken?" He glanced at me, then shrugged. "What? You didn't hear your mom?" I asked. "Wives are temporary. This is my son's house. She said it right there in front of everybody." He rolled his eyes. "Babe, you know how she is," he said, waving it off. "She old school. She don't mean nothing by it. You be taking stuff too personal." "She said I'm temporary," I repeated. "In my own living room, in the house my daddy's money bought." "It's my house too," he snapped, a little sharper than before. "You act like I don't pay nothing." "I never said that," I replied, "but I'm not going to stand here and let her pretend I'm some girl you dragged in off the street." He sighed, closing the fridge a little too hard. "Look, can you not start? I'm tired. She's tired. We all tired. You know she's protective of me. Just let it go." There it was. Let it go. Put it under the rug he was standing on and pretend we didn't both feel the bump. I didn't push it further that night, not because I agreed, but because I saw it, the line already drawn in his mind. On one side, his mama with all her old school ways. On the other, me, too sensitive. He went to bed. I stayed up in the living room, the glow of the streetlight creeping through the blinds, staring at the walls. People think disrespect is just big moments, screaming matches, slammed doors. Sometimes it's softer. A sentence dropped like a knife in a room full of people who pretend they didn't see the cut. The temporary comment didn't go away. It grew legs, started walking around my house in other forms. The next few weeks, Althea's visits changed. She didn't just come to see her son. She came with an agenda. One Saturday, she arrived with a woman I'd never met before. "This is Darlene," she announced, sweeping into the living room. "She's a decorator. I thought we could finally talk about getting this place looking more Hayes family." I blinked. "More what?" I asked. "More our style," she said airily. "You know, something more timeless. These gray walls are cute, but this is a family home, not an Instagram apartment." The gray walls she was talking about? I painted them myself. Nights after work, when Jamal was too tired to help. Darlene smiled, clutching her portfolio. We could open up this space, add some built-in shelving. And that dining room? We could knock out that wall, create a big open concept. It would really increase the value when y'all are ready to sell or, pass it down. Pass it down. I looked at Jamal. He just shrugged, staying glued to the game on TV. "I'm not hiring a decorator right now," I said calmly. "We got other priorities." "Oh, it's not a big deal," Althea said. "Jamal and I were talking. We could maybe roll it into the refinance. Right, baby?" "Yeah, we were just talking options," Jamal said vaguely. "Rate's been changing. Mama's friend at the bank said we might be able to restructure some things." That was the first time I heard that word. Restructure. I didn't like the way it felt on my skin. "We'll talk about it," I said, forcing a smile. "But not today." Althea pursed her lips, disappointed. Darlene shifted awkwardly, clearly wishing she'd gotten this gig without all the subtext. They left with promises to revisit it later. I thought maybe that was the end. It was only the beginning. Little things started showing up in the mail. A letter from Jamal's credit union addressed to him only, about pre-approved home equity options. A brochure from a mortgage company, with his name bolded and mine in faint print underneath. One envelope that made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Important information regarding changes to your loan terms. I sat at the table and peeled it open carefully. It wasn't a done deal. It was an offer. A refinance option with revised borrower structure to better reflect current income and credit profiles. Underneath, in the tiny sample document, I saw it. Proposed primary borrower, Jamal King. Nia King. I'd seen enough financial paperwork in my job to know the order of those names matters. Who the bank sees as the main risk, the main owner, the main decision maker. That night, Jamal brought it up like it was a small favor. "Hey, did you see that letter from Capital One?" he asked, tossing his keys on the counter. "About the refinance?" "I opened it," I said. "It's addressed to both of us." "Yeah, well, that's why I brought it up," he said. "Look, interest rates dropped a little. We could roll in some of my business debt, free up some cash." Mama said. I held up my hand. "There it is," I said. Mama said. "She just wants what's best, Nia. She said it's risky having everything in your name with the kind of job I do. If something happens." "If something happens to who?" I asked, because last I checked my income is the reason this bank approved us in the first place. He shifted, annoyed. "Why you always gotta make it a thing?" he demanded. "All I'm saying is it's smarter for me to be primary on the house. Protects the family asset," Mama said. "If something happens between us." He stopped himself, but it was too late. The sentence was halfway out there, naked. "If something happens between us," I repeated slowly. "You want to be the one the bank sees first." He threw up his hands. "You twisting my words. I'm just thinking ahead. You know how divorce courts be. They love siding with women. This just makes it fair." I stared at him. Fair. Fair to who? To the woman whose dead father's policy paid the down payment, who kept her credit clean, who signed the original loan. Or the man whose mama walked around my house calling me temporary. "I'm not signing anything until I understand exactly what it does," I said finally. "All the way down to the commas." He scoffed. "That's why people stay broke," he muttered, scared to make moves. From that point, the campaign got more obvious. Althea stopped masking her comments with jokes. One Sunday, she cornered me in the kitchen while I was frosting a cake. "You know, you should be grateful my son is even thinking of putting everything under his name to protect you," she said, voice sugary. "If y'all ever split, he could just kick you out. But he wants you to have something." That's the kind of man he is. I put the knife down slowly. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "if we split today, I'm the one who could keep the house and ask him to leave." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me?" she asked. "My name is first on the deed," I continued. "The loan is in my name. My father's money bought this down payment. If anyone is being generous here, it's me." Her eyes hardened. "You must be out your mind," she snapped. "I raised that boy. I know how hard he works. Everything he got, he earned." "I never said he didn't," I replied. "But you keep talking like I'm some visitor he let stay here out of pity, and I'm not." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Be careful, Nia," she said quietly. Women who forget their place end up without one. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly, but it carried the weight of someone who thought she knew how these stories end. The wife leaves, the man keeps the house, the mother stands on the porch like a queen who never lost her throne. She didn't know there were other endings now. I wiped my hands, walked past her, and went to the bedroom. I pulled out the old cardboard box where I'd kept our closing documents. Back then, I'd tuck them away, like a good memory, like wedding photos or baby shoes we never got around to filling. Now, I spread them out on the bed, heart pounding. Settlement statement, deed of trust, promissory note, warranty deed. Line after line showed it clearly. Borrower, Nia King. Co-borrower, Jamal King. Source of funds, life insurance, James King, father of borrower. It was all there, in black and white. Not my feelings, not my pride. Facts. The next day at work, during lunch, I vented to my coworker, Shauna, a social worker who'd seen too many messy cases. "Girl, they are not slick," she said, shaking her head. "First, it's wives are temporary. Then it's, let's refinance and protect the family asset. Next thing you know, you sign something, and when stuff hits the fan, everybody acting confused about why you ain't on the paperwork no more." I stared at my salad, appetite gone. "What do I do?" I asked quietly. "I don't want to start a war, but I feel like they're moving chess pieces, and I'm the one standing still." "Then stop standing still," she said. "You ever talk to a real estate attorney?" I shook my head. "Call one," she said, like it was as simple as calling an Uber. "Bring your deed. Bring your mortgage. Ask them what happens if you sign anything he's talking about. Ask them where you really stand." "What if I'm overreacting?" I whispered. Shauna looked at me for a long second. "Then a lawyer will tell you that," she said, "and you'll sleep better. But if you're not overreacting, if you're right, then you better find out before a pen hits paper." That night, when Jamal came home and casually asked, "You think you can stop by the bank with me next week? They need both of us to sign some things," I smiled. "Sure," I said. "Right after I talk to someone about what those things are." He frowned. "Talk to who?" he asked. I met his eyes. "A lawyer," I said. He laughed once, that sharp laugh that used to make me flinch. "For what?" He scoffed. "We family. Why you acting like a stranger?" "Because," I thought, folding the dish towel slowly, "you and your mother already decided I'm temporary." "I just want clarity," I said. "If everything is as fair and simple as you say, a little legal advice shouldn't scare anybody." He opened his mouth, ready to argue. Then he closed it. "Do what you want," he said finally, walking away. "Just don't mess up a good opportunity because you listening to people at work who don't know our business." Maybe they didn't know our business, but the county, the bank, and a lawyer with a bar number did. And for the first time since Althea called me temporary, I felt like I might not have to swallow this whole thing and hope for the best. I could bring my own voice and the paperwork with my name on it into the room where they thought they'd already written my ending. Period. I didn't book the lawyer appointment like some big dramatic move. I did it on my lunch break, sitting in my car, scrub still on, badge flipped backward, hands shaking over my phone. Google, real estate attorney near me, filter, black-owned firm. If I was going to sit in front of somebody and admit I'd let people treat me like a guest in a house I'd actually bought, I wanted at least a chance they'd get it. I found a small firm 10 minutes from the hospital. The reviews kept repeating the same thing: patient, thorough, explains everything in plain English. I called. "Hi, I just have some questions about my house deed and mortgage," I said. "I think my husband and his mother are trying to restructure things, and I don't want to sign something I'll regret." The receptionist didn't laugh, didn't say I was being dramatic. She just said, bring every paper you have from closing, plus anything they've asked you to sign recently. We'll see what's what. 2 days later, I walked into a quiet lobby that smelled like coffee and printer ink. Family photos on the wall, black families at graduations, in front of sold signs, shaking hands with the same man I was about to meet. He came out from a glass door office, maybe late 40s, gray at his temples, tie loosened like he'd been reading contracts since sunrise. Mrs. King? Yes, I said, standing up. I'm Ann Douglas, he said, shaking my hand. Come on back. Let's take a look at what you've got. His office had shelves lined with thick binders and a single plant that was somehow still alive. I sat down, heart pounding, and set my huge manila folder on his desk. I'm sorry. I know it's a mess, I said. These are all the documents from when we bought the house. I haven't really looked at them since. That's fine, he said calmly. That's why I'm here. Start from the beginning. Tell me what's going on, in your own words. So I did. I told him about my dad's life insurance, about the loan officer saying my profile carried the mortgage, about the deed with my name first, about the refinance letters, about Jamal and his mama calling me temporary in my own living room. He listened without interrupting, pen moving occasionally across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, I felt exposed and silly at the same time. I know it sounds like family drama, I said quickly, but something in my gut it feels wrong. Like they're trying to move the goalposts and tell me it's normal. He nodded slowly. It doesn't just sound like family drama, he said. It sounds like you did what a lot of people do. You trusted your spouse. You trusted the process. And now some folks are trying to rewrite things quietly. Let's see what the law says, not what anybody's mama says. He opened my folder and started pulling things out. First, the closing disclosure, then the note, then the warranty deed. Here, he turned the deed so it faced me and tapped a line with his pen. Read this. I leaned in. It was all there like I remembered, but seeing it now felt different. Grantee, Nia King, an individual, and Jamal King, spouse as co-owner. And this section, he said, sliding his finger further down. Source of funds for the purchase. I read it out loud. Proceeds from policy, insured, James King, deceased. My daddy's name on that paper hit me in the chest all over again. So, Mr. Douglas said gently, who provided the down payment money? I did, I said, from my father's policy. Right, and whose income qualified this loan? He flipped to the loan application and pointed at the numbers. 2 columns, my salary, my work history. Jamal's contract income. The difference was clear. Mine carried it, I admitted. Correct, he said. Now your husband is on title, yes, but in terms of how this property was acquired and how the lender sees the risk, you are the primary. This house does not exist without you. Something hot pricked behind my eyes. I feel crazy even needing you to say that, I whispered. You're not crazy, he said. You're being gaslit. That's different. He sat back. Let me explain what that restructure really means, he continued. If they get you to refinance in a way that puts him as primary borrower and you as co-borrower, or worse, if they ever slide a quitclaim deed in front of you to simplify things, you are giving away leverage you currently have. Today, if your marriage ended, a judge would look at these documents and say, Mrs. King contributed significantly to acquiring this property. That matters. If you sign that away, on paper, it starts to look like he rescued you. My stomach dropped. That's exactly the story his mother keeps telling, I said. That he provided a home and I should be grateful. He gave a small, humorless smile. She's rehearsing the script she wants to use later, he said. You're smart to notice it now. He pulled out the refinance offer letter I'd brought and read it closely. This isn't a done deal yet, he said. This is marketing. But if you walk into that bank, trusting them and your husband to explain it, this kind of structure is exactly what they'll steer you toward. And once you sign, it's a lot harder to unwind. So what do? I asked, Never refinance? Refuse everything? That'll start a whole war in the family. He shook his head. I'm not telling you to start a war, he said. I'm telling you to know your position before you start negotiating. Right now, you are majority owner in equity and contribution. The law is on your side more than you think. You don't give that away to make dinner conversations easier. He flipped to a fresh page on his yellow pad. Let's talk about what you want, he said, not what they want. I blinked. What I want? I repeated. It sounded foreign. Yes, he said. If your marriage works out, what do you want your security to look like? And if it doesn't, what do you need to still sleep at night? Do you want to keep this house no matter what? Do you want the rights to sell it if you choose? Do you want your father's money to be protected as your contribution, not everybody's play toy? No one had asked me that. Not Jamal, not his mama, not even me. I swallowed. I want to know that if things go left, I don't end up on a cousin's couch while they sit in this living room talking about how the family home stayed in the bloodline, I said. I want this house either to be mine or to be something we split fairly, not just taken. He nodded. Then here's what we're going to do, he said, writing as he spoke. 1, you do not sign anything related to refinancing, transferring interest, or updating the deed without me reviewing it first. Full stop. Okay, I said. 2, he continued, we're going to update your estate planning. Right now, if something happened to you, this house would very likely default more toward your husband, even though your father's money funded it. You said you don't have children yet? I shook my head. Then we draft a will that clearly states what you want to happen with this property, he said. That way, if anyone ever tries to argue you were just temporary, there will be a paper trail saying otherwise, signed and notarized. Okay, I said again, the word feeling a little stronger now. 3, he said, if your husband insists on a refinance, we do it on your terms. We can absolutely restructure a loan to get a better rate without altering ownership in a way that erases you. If he objects to that, that tells us a lot about his motives. I sat there, letting it sink in. So I'm not overreacting, I said softly. He looked me in the eye. Mrs. King, he said, any time a grown man and his mother are pushing a woman to sign property documents she doesn't understand, after mocking her in the home she funded, you are not overreacting. You're waking up. I laughed weakly, wiping my eyes. Sorry, I muttered. I didn't mean to get emotional. You're allowed, he said. You're grieving, too. Not just your father, but the version of your marriage you thought you had. That hit so hard I couldn't speak for a moment. He pushed a tissue box toward me, then went back to his pad. At some point, he said, they may try to corner you, make you feel like you're being difficult, more ungrateful if you don't sign. When that happens, I want you to have an out. So here's what I suggest. You do not have paperwork conversations at home. You invite them here, neutral ground. When the time comes, I'll be the one explaining who owns what. The picture formed in my mind before he even finished the sentence. My mother-in-law, sitting across from this same desk where my documents lay. That tight smile, the one she uses when she's sure she's right. And this time, a lawyer reading out loud what the county records actually say. Can you do that? I asked. Like with them both here? He nodded. As long as you authorize it, yes, he said. It's your file, your property, your choice. I exhaled slowly. By the time I left his office, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. The papers in my folder hadn't changed. My father was still gone. Jamal was still moody, and Althea was probably somewhere telling someone how proud she was of her son's house. But I had something I didn't have before: language, proof, a plan. That night, when Jamal came home and casually said, "Mama was asking if we went to the bank yet," I dried my hands on a towel and answered calmly. "I didn't go to the bank," I said. "I went to a lawyer." He frowned. "For what?" "To understand what I already own," I said, And if you and your mother want to talk about changing anything, Mr. Douglas said he'd be happy to meet with all of us. He scoffed, annoyed. So now we dragging lawyers into family business? He said. No, I replied, meeting his eyes. Your family dragged my name into business. I'm just making sure my signature doesn't follow it blind. He shook his head and walked away, muttering something about me overdoing it. Let him mutter. Because the next time his mother called me temporary, it wouldn't just be my feelings she was bumping up against. It would be the deed, the loan, and a lawyer with a very clear understanding of whose name was holding up the roof over her head. Althea didn't come back to my house for almost 2 weeks. At first, I thought maybe the universe had answered a prayer I hadn't dared to pray out loud. Then Jamal cleared it up one night while we were getting ready for bed. "Mama's mad at you," he said, brushing his teeth like he was delivering the weather. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, moisturizing my face. "What did I do now?" I asked. "She said you threatened her grandbaby's house with lawyers," he replied. He said around the toothbrush. "You know how that sounds to her friends? Like you trying to kick her blood out." I set the jar down, staring at him. "Her grandbaby's house?" I repeated. "Does she hear herself? I am literally the baby in this situation. I'm the one paying this mortgage." He spit, rinsed, shrugged. "You know what she meant," he said. "She feels like you went behind the family to some stranger instead of just trusting us." "You mean instead of trusting the same people trying to slide papers at me I don't understand?" I shot back. "You know what the lawyer showed me, Jamal? That if I had signed that refinance blind, I would have given up a lot more than interest points." He rolled his eyes. "Oh my God, here we go. Y'all always gotta run to some professional who don't know our history." "History doesn't pay lawyers when something goes wrong," I said quietly. "Paper does. And right now the paper says this house is mine and yours, equally. That's all I'm trying to keep." He sat on the bed, exhaling hard. "All right, so what do you want?" he asked. "Mama's not going to stop talking about this. She wants things straight. She said y'all need to sit down face to face like adults." I almost laughed. She wanted a face-to-face now that she thought she could guilt me into surrendering paperwork? "Good," I said. "Let's sit down, at Mr. Douglas's office." His head snapped toward me. "At the lawyer's?" he said. "Why?" "Because that's where the documents are," I replied. "You want to talk about the house? We'll talk with the deed on the table. I'm not doing another round of your temporary over potato salad. I'm done with that." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "I'll tell her," he said, "but don't be surprised if she comes in hot." "She always does," I said. "This time she just won't be the only one with a voice." Mr. Douglas arranged the meeting for a Thursday afternoon. I took off work early and sat in my car outside his office, hands gripping the steering wheel. A part of me still felt guilty. Like I was betraying some unspoken Black family rule. Don't bring outsiders into private business. But then I pictured Althea waving off my contribution like it meant nothing, and Jamal talking about making it fair by putting everything under his name. This wasn't just business. This was my life, my roof, my father's last gift. I went in. Mr. Douglas was already in the conference room, a rectangular space with a long table, 3 chairs on each side, and a jug of water with little paper cups. My file sat open in front of him, neat and calmly dangerous. "You ready?" he asked. "No," I admitted, "but I'm here." He smiled slightly. "That's enough." 5 minutes later, I heard their voices in the lobby. Jamal's steady baritone. Althea's higher, sharper tone. She swept into the room in a royal purple suit. Like she was going to a board meeting she'd already decided she won. "Well, this is fancy," she said, looking around. "All this just to talk about a simple refinance?" Jamal gave me a tight smile and sat next to her, across from me. "Mrs. King," Mr. Douglas said smoothly, reaching out his hand. "And you must be Mr. King and Miss Hayes. I'm Aaron Douglas, counsel for Nia." "Counsel?" Althea repeated, not taking his hand at first. Then she seemed to remember she was in someone else's space and forced a smile. "We're just here to make sure everybody's on the same page." "Yes, ma'am," he said, taking his seat. "That's my goal too. Clarity. No surprises." He turned to me. "As we discussed," he said, "nothing changes today without your explicit consent. We're just talking through the current status of the property and any proposed changes." Althea scoffed softly. "See? This is what I mean," she said to Jamal, ignoring the lawyer. "A simple family decision now sounds like a court case." "Miss Hayes," Mr. Douglas said evenly, "you can think of me like a translator. The county, the bank, the insurance companies, they all speak paper. This meeting is just about making sure everyone understands what the paper already says." That shut her up for a second. He opened the file, culled out the deed, and placed it where they could both see. "Let's start here," he said. "This is the recorded warranty deed for the property at 1427 Willow Creek Lane. The day your son and daughter-in-law closed on this home." He tapped the top section. "This line," he said, "lists the grantees, meaning who the property was given to in the transaction. I'm going to read it exactly as it appears." He cleared his throat and read slowly. "To Nia King, an individual, and Jamal King, spouse, as co-owners." He looked up. "That means both of them own this house," he said, "not just your son." Althea's lips pressed into a thin line. "Well, of course her name is on there," she said. "They're married, but he's the man of the house. He's the one who—" Mr. Douglas raised a hand gently. "I'm not here to debate cultural norms, Miss Hayes," he said politely. "I'm here to talk about legal ownership. And legally, they stand side by side on this property. Now let's look at how it was acquired." He pulled out another document and slid it forward. "This is the settlement statement and loan file," he continued. "You'll see this section labeled Source of Funds. It states the down payment came from life insurance proceeds on a policy held by James King, Nia's father." He let that sit in the air. "So in plain language," he said, turning specifically to Althea, "your daughter-in-law's inheritance funded the purchase of this home. Without that, there is no down payment, no house to argue about." Jamal shifted in his chair. "That's not entirely fair," he said. "I've been paying the mortgage too." "Absolutely," Mr. Douglas said, "and no one is denying that. But we're distinguishing between initial acquisition and ongoing maintenance. Both matter. One doesn't erase the other." Althea leaned forward. "Look," she said, voice tight, "we're not here to rewrite history. We're just saying it makes more sense to have my son as the main owner now. He's the head of the family. If anything happens, this house should stay with him and the children. Not get snatched away because of some technicality?" "Technicality?" I repeated under my breath. Mr. Douglas heard it. "This is where I need to be very clear," he said. "What you're calling a technicality is your daughter-in-law's legal protection. Right now, if something went wrong, divorce, death, debt, the law would recognize her as a central contributor and owner. The refinance proposal that's been discussed would weaken that position significantly." "How?" Jamal challenged. "The bank said it was just a better rate and a cleaner structure." Mr. Douglas turned another page, the refinance offer they'd sent. "In this draft," he said, "your name, Mr. King, is listed as primary borrower and primary owner for underwriting purposes. Mrs. King is moved to secondary. That means in future disputes or in the event of default, the file will read as if you are the principal responsible party and stakeholder." "In English," I said quietly, "that means if we split and things get ugly, it starts looking like you let me stay here, instead of us both owning this." He nodded. "Exactly," he said. "Courts don't just look at one document. They look at patterns. Right now, the pattern is her father's funds, her credit profile. Her is primary on the original loan. That is very strong for her. Why give that away for a slightly lower interest rate when there are other ways to refinance that don't erase that history?" Jamal's jaw tightened. "So what? She gets everything if we divorce?" he said. "That sound fair to you?" It sounds like you're skipping 10 steps to get to the worst case scenario, I said. I'm not sitting here asking for the house and your left kidney. I'm saying I'm not signing away the protection I already have so y'all can feel better about some story where I'm just visiting. Althea's eyes flashed. Don't you dare talk to my son like he's some con artist, she snapped. He was just trying to— Miss Hayes, Mr. Douglas interrupted, calmly but firmly. Let me ask you a question. If the situation were reversed, if your late husband's insurance money had purchased this house, and your name was first on the deed, would you be eager to sign documents that moved you to the background? Her mouth opened, then closed. That's different, she said. I'm his mother. And she, he replied, nodding at me, is his wife. In the eyes of the law, that is not less, it is more. The room went quiet. I'd never heard anyone say that to her before, not even her own son. Mr. Douglas folded his hands. Here's where we are, he said. This house is jointly owned. It was acquired using Mrs. King's inheritance and both of your incomes. Any change to that structure requires both signatures, and my client is not going to sign any document that reduces her interest or weakens the protection of her father's contribution. Period. Jamal sank back in his chair, looking frustrated. So what? Nothing changes? He asked. We just stay stuck like this forever? No, Mr. Douglas said. You're free to pursue a refinance that leaves the ownership ratio intact, names, order, and all. I'll happily review those documents when the bank drafts them. But this idea that Mrs. King needs to step aside so the real family can control the house, that's not going to happen on my watch. He turned to me. Do you want to add anything? He asked. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out calm. Just this, I said, looking from Jamal to his mother. I am not temporary in my own life. I am not a guest in the home my father helped me buy. If this marriage lasts, this house stays ours. If it doesn't, then the law will decide a fair split based on what we both put in. But I will not sign anything that turns me into a footnote in a story I funded. Althea stared at me like she was seeing a different person. You've changed, she said coldly. I met her gaze. I said, I just stopped letting you edit me out. She grabbed her purse, standing abruptly. Come on, Jamal, she snapped. We don't need this man or his papers telling us how to run our family. Jamal hesitated, looking between us. For once, I didn't beg, didn't explain, didn't chase. I simply slid my copy of the deed back into the folder and said, I'll be at the house if you want to talk like partners, not like I'm temporary. As they left, Mr. Douglas looked at me. This was the hard part, he said quietly. From here on, it's boundaries and follow-through. I nodded, feeling something click into place in my chest. For the first time, my house didn't feel like something I was secretly clinging to. It felt like something I had just publicly claimed. In the weeks after that meeting, the house felt different. Nothing in it had moved. The same gray walls, the same couch with the sagging middle cushion, the same picture of my daddy on the hallway table, smiling in that church suit he hated but wore for my mama. But something had shifted in the air. Before, I used to walk around this place half like an owner, half like a guest on borrowed time. After hearing Mr. Douglas read those lines out loud, with my father's name, my contribution, it was like someone had finally turned the lights on in a room I'd been tiptoeing through in the dark. This was my home, not a favor, not an accident. Still, legal clarity doesn't magically fix people. Jamal was cold for a while. He went from annoyed jokes, oh, here comes Mrs. Lawyer, to long silences where he'd sit on the edge of the bed scrolling his phone, jaw clenched. One night, after almost a week of barely speaking, he finally snapped. You really had to embarrass my mama like that? He demanded, dropping his keys on the counter so hard they bounced. I was making tea. I set the mug down slowly. You mean when the lawyer read the deed? I asked. The one we all signed? The one with my father's name on it? That embarrassment? You know how she is, he said. All that inheritance stuff. You might as well have called her broke to her face. She said she felt like you tried to make her look small in front of that man. I stared at him, I said quietly. Your mother has been walking into this house calling me temporary, acting like this is your bachelor pad and I'm the help. All I did was put the truth on the table and stop apologizing for it. He rubbed his hands over his face. So what now, he said. We just live like this? You and your lawyer on one side, me and my mama on the other? It doesn't have to be sides, I said. It can be boundaries. I'm not trying to cut her out. I'm done letting her erase me. There's a difference. He didn't respond. We started doing something we should have done years earlier. Therapy. Not because either of us was some villain or saint, because we'd built a whole marriage on unspoken assumptions. He assumed man of the house meant final say. I assumed sharing a bed meant sharing power. His mother assumed being the one who raised him gave her eternal veto power over anything with his name on it. Our therapist, a soft-spoken black woman with sharp eyes, listened to all of it. This isn't just about a heist, she said one session. It's about who gets to define reality in this marriage. For a long time, Nia has been carrying the weight, but told she's temporary. Now the paperwork is backing her up instead of your mother's narrative. That's threatening. For you and for her. She turned to me. And for you, Nia, this isn't just about money. It's about your father, she added. Protecting this house is one of the ways you're still protecting him. That's why this cuts so deep. I swallowed hard. No one had said it like that before. Jamal didn't magically transform into super husband after that. But he did start doing something important. He stopped pretending he didn't see what his mother was doing. The next time she came by and made a snide comment, "Oh, you went with gray paint again? I guess this works for your taste." He didn't stay silent. "Mama," he said flatly, "this is Nia's house too. Her money helped buy it. Her taste is part of it. If you don't like that, you can go home." She blinked, shocked. The words "go home" hung in the air like a bell. She went quiet. She didn't stay for dessert. Life rolled on. We worked, we argued, we made up, we went to therapy, we paid the mortgage. And then one sticky evening in late August, everything twisted in a way I didn't see coming. Jamal came home with that look, the one that meant he was about to present a decision as if it was a question. "Baby," he started carefully, "Mama's building just got sold." I looked up from my laptop. "What do you mean?" "She called me this morning, new landlord, talking about remodeling, raising rents, maybe turning the whole place into those fancy condos," he said. "Her lease is up in 2 months. She can't afford what they're asking." My first instinct was ugly. A little voice in me said, "Not my problem." But another part of me, older, tired, still my mama's daughter, heard something else. A black woman in her 60s, about to be pushed out of her home because somebody wanted granite counters and white cabinets. "She got somewhere else to go?" I asked. He hesitated. "Well, she was hoping." He shifted, not quite meeting my eyes. "Maybe she could stay with us for a while, just till she figures out her next move." There it was. The title of the story I hadn't realized we were walking toward. The house she lives in. The same house she said wasn't really mine. The same house where she called me temporary. I leaned back in my chair. "Okay," I said slowly. "She can stay here, but not like before." "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, defensive. "It means I'm not bringing your mother into my home as a queen visiting her son," I said. "If she moves in here, it's as a guest, and she will treat me like the co-owner I am. No more temporary. No more jokes about my son's house." "She's not gonna like that," he warned. "She doesn't have to like it," I replied. "She just has to respect it. And before she brings so much as a throw pillow through that door, we're going back to Mr. Douglas." His eyebrows shot up. "For what?" he asked. Now you need a lawyer for her to sleep in the guest room? I need a lawyer to make sure everyone understands this is a favor, not a transfer, I said. Because I see the pattern. First it's, just let me stay for a while. Then it's, why you acting like you can put me out of my own family home? I'm not living that story. He opened his mouth, closed it. Finally, he nodded. Fine, he said. Set it up. 2 weeks later, the three of us sat in that same conference room again. This time, Althea looked smaller, not in stature. Her back was still straight. Her hair still sprayed into perfect place, but in presence. Life had humbled her a little. Miss Hayes, Mr. Douglas said pleasantly, thank you for coming back. I understand we're talking about you moving in with your son and daughter-in-law for a while. Yes, she said stiffly. My landlord is making changes. Jamal said there was room at the house. There is, I said. We're not discussing whether you can come. We're discussing how. She shot me a look, but didn't snap back. Mr. Douglas opened a fresh folder. To avoid confusion later, he said, we're going to put some things in writing. Nothing complicated, just clarity. He slid a simple document to the middle of the table. At the top, he explained, we have the property address. Under that, it says owners of record Nia King and Jamal King. That matches the county deed. Below that, it states temporary resident, Althea Hayes, mother of co-owner. He said it so casually. But for the first time, the word temporary wasn't sitting on my chest. It was on the right person. Althea bristled. Why all that? She asked. I'm just staying in the extra room. I'm not some tenant. This isn't a lease, he said calmly. It's an acknowledgement. It states that you understand this is your son and daughter-in-law's home, and that your stay is by their permission. It also makes it clear you are not being added to the deed or given any ownership stake, now or later, by virtue of living there. He pointed to another paragraph. There's also a line here that says all major decisions about the property, sale, refinance, renovations, require both owners' consent. That's not new law. That's just restating what already exists. She looked at the paper like it had insulted her. So you're telling me I have to sign something just to live with my own child? She said. No, I said gently. You don't have to do anything. You have options. You can find another apartment. You can move in with your sister. You can stay in a hotel. Or you can live with us under clear terms that protect everybody, including you. She frowned. How does this protect me? She asked. Because, Mr. Douglas said, God forbid something happens to your son, or they divorce, or there's a dispute down the line. This paper shows no one tricked you or hung vague promises over your head. You came in with eyes open, understanding this is their home. She stared at the document, jaw tight. And if I don't sign, she asked, then you don't move in, I said quietly. Silence. You could hear the hum of the AC unit in the corner. Jamal shifted in his seat. Mama, he said softly, this is just making sure there's no drama later. You know Nia's not trying to hurt you? She looked at him, then at me. What I saw in her eyes wasn't just pride. It was grief. Grief over a fantasy she'd held on to. That no matter who he married, this son, this house, this life would always orbit her. Now the universe had shifted a few degrees. Slowly, reluctantly, she picked up the pen. Her hand trembled as she signed Althea M. Hayes on the line that said temporary resident. When she put the pen down, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt balanced. For once, the paper matched the truth we were all living. She moved in the following weekend. We cleared out the back bedroom, painted it a warm cream, put her dresser against the window she liked. I bought her a new set of towels, not because she deserved them, but because I refused to let bitterness turn me into someone I wasn't. The first few weeks were rocky. She would slip. This is why I told my son to get a house with more land, she'd mutter. Or, in my son's home, we don't keep shoes by the door. But now, instead of swallowing it, I had language. This is our home, I'd correct calmly, and our shoes can stay right there. Sometimes Jamal backed me up. Sometimes he didn't. But that was okay, because whether he did or not, I knew something I couldn't unknow: the county record, the deed, the paper with my father's name, my name, and now hers, under temporary resident. Months passed. We found a rhythm. She helped with the laundry. I helped her fill out some assistance applications. Sometimes we ended up in the kitchen together, saying nothing, chopping vegetables like an uneasy truce. One evening, she was watching some church program in the living room when a segment came on about protecting your assets in blended families. They talked about wills, deeds, trusts. She watched silently, then glanced at the hallway where my daddy's photo hung. "You really used your father's policy to get this place?" she asked. There was no bite in her voice for once. "Yeah," I said softly. "He made me promise I'd use it for something that would outlast both of us. I thought a house was a good start." She stared at the TV for a long moment. "I didn't know that part," she said quietly. "I just thought you came into what Jamal already had." I almost laughed. "He didn't have anything yet," I said. "We built this together." "With my daddy's help." She nodded slowly. Her chin lifted like she was about to fire off another comment. But instead, she just said, "Well, you did good." In Althea language, that was a fully written apology on parchment. I took it. Not for her, for me. I'm telling you this story years later. Jamal and I are still together, but not because I clung to him out of fear of losing the house. We're together because we both did the work. Therapy, hard conversations, separate bank accounts, updated wills. His mother still lives with us. Not as a queen, as a grandmother in the back room of the house her daughter-in-law bought with her father's last gift. Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, I'll catch her staring at that photo in the hallway. She doesn't call me temporary anymore. And when she introduces me at church, she doesn't say my son's wife first. She says, "This is my daughter-in-law, Nia. This is her house we stay in." God blessed her with wisdom. I smile. Because that's what this whole story really was about. Not just karma. Not just a lawyer reading a deed. But a Black woman finally realizing she is not a guest in her own life. And that sometimes the most powerful clapback isn't tossing people out. It's standing in the doorway of the home you built and calmly choosing who gets to stay. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I love reading where my listeners are tuning in from. If this story hit home for you, you can support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more real-life stories like this. Your sweet support means more than you know. On the screen, you'll see 2 more life stories I highly recommend. They're full of hard lessons, quiet victories, and a whole lot of heart. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next life story. With love and respect, I'll see you in the next one.